Hello ladies and gentlemen, Nick here, and welcome to my ranking of Doctor Who Season 14, which is Jack McCulloch's favourite season of Doctor Who. I'll just give him another shout out because it's his favourite season, so here's a shout out for Jack McCulloch. He'll probably also remind me in the comments anyway, so I might as well just give him a shout out here and now, so then he can also confirm it in the comments later on. Hope he's not offended. So, season 14. Now, unlike Jack, well, I really love this season, but I don't find it to be the best of the show so far. I think it's actually my least favourite of the 3 Tom Baker ones so far, but it's still one of his best, especially considering what comes up later on. It's just that I prefer seasons 12 and 13, especially 13. I found that really good. It's just that Plans of Evil wasn't my cup of, wasn't my mug of water. But all the other stories just clicked. This one mostly clicked. Yeah, it's like season 12. It's pretty solid, very solid season. And I would still consider it a very one of the best of the shows so far. I think I did try at the day of recording. I did try thinking of what my ranking of seasons would be at this point, and I think this one comes 5th out of 14. So yeah, it's just that 12 and 13 are a bit higher. That's all. But that being said, this is still a really brilliant season. So let's get right down and dirty into ranking this season. So before we start, here are the stories. They are The Masque of Mandragora, The Hand of Fear, The Deadly Assassin, The Face of Evil, The Robots of Death, and The Talons of Weng-Chiang. So, let's start this list. So in my review of The Masque of Mandragora, I had said that The Face of Evil was going to be my least favourite of the season. But after rewatching the story, and I then mentioned at the start of my Deadly Assassin review, and in the Face of Evil, I keep doing that, saying Planet of Evil instead of Face of Evil. In my Face of Evil review, that story was no longer my least favourite, and Masque of Mandragora had now taken that spot. But I was going to 100% confirm what my least favourite story of the season would be in the ranking, as per usual. And I can now confirm that my least favourite story from season 14, which is number 6 in this ranking, is not The Face of Evil. And I almost said Plans of Evil again. You got 2 something of evils in a row in consecutive seasons. It's getting confusing. Oh, I'm glad I didn't do it for the next one. Anyways, but what is my least favourite story of the season? Well, you've probably guessed which one it is. Well, if it's not The Face of Evil, there's really only one other one other story that it could possibly be, and you'd be right if you thought this. You'd be completely wrong if you thought one of the others. It is, of course, The Masque of Mandragora. Yep, so our 6th spot is The Masque of Mandragora, the season opener, and this is probably the weakest season opener since season 6, as I mentioned in my review. So it's not that great of a way to start the season. It's still a good story, it's just not as strong as season 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and 13's first stories. So that's why it's got such a low. That's why I consider it the weakest season opener since season 6. It won't stay that way, but at this point in time it will be. Second of all, this story doesn't really feel like a season opener as well. It feels just like a normal story. It doesn't feel like an opening story, apart from introducing the new TARDIS set, which, by the way, we didn't see that in Talons Of Weng-Chiang. I didn't mention that in my review. So it pops up in 5 of the 6 stories before retirement, and then we get a normal console back in Invisible Enemy. Speak of which, we only had 2 instances of a normal console room in season 13. Only Planet of Evil, at that time I got the title right there, and Pyramids of Mars. So, I don't know why they wanted to go for them. I don't know why they wanted a wooden one for this season. They just decided to, and it doesn't look that great. It's air. I would have preferred just an updated standard one, really. It's used effect. The new console room is used well in what scenes it does have. So it is good that they have, for the one season it appears in, it's used effectively. This story not as much, but certainly in later stories, minus Talons, of course. Also, it's a Louis Marks story in the Tom Baker era, and for me, there seems to be something that, with Louis Marks' stories before he was wrote for Tom Baker, They were great. I mean, Planet of Giants may not be everybody's cup of tea, but I found that a good story, a nice little mystery, little bit of a sci-fi fantasy adventure. It was nice. It was good, and they did the best they could with 1964 budget. And then we got 1972's Day of the Daleks, which was brilliant, especially on the rewatch I did for the review. And it's just great. The special edition, of course, made it even better, but the original it was still really great, minus a few problems, such as those shit Dalek voices. But still, it was still really brilliant. But with his Tom Baker scripts, with Planet of Evil and Masque of Mandragora, it feels like there's something missing. There's some sort of magic, some great story, some creativity that was in his Hartnell and Pertwee scripts, but not in his Tom Baker ones. I don't know what it is, and it's more noticeable here. Planet of Evil, I just didn't like personally, but I know quite a few people here. I think generally his least popular story, if it's not Planet of Giants, it would be this one. I think there is something missing from here. Maybe that might even have been in Planet of Evil, some sort of creativity. I just didn't like how that creativity was handled in that story. But I think that must have had a little bit, whilst this one, there seems to be something missing. I mean, it's still good, but there's still something there. There's that Louis Marks magic from his first two stories that had sort of disappeared or wasn't really there for Planet of Evil. Was only a little bit there, at least. Again, it seems to be only a little bit seems to be here, enough to make it good, but not enough to make it amazing, like his first two scripts. I'll have Planet of Giants or Day of the Daleks any day over his two Tom Baker stories. I know they're in two of the best seasons of the show, and the other two are in two other seasons of the show. One of the weaker ones at this point, but those two stories I would have any day. I'm sorry, season 14 fans, but Masque of Mandragora is not my cup of tea. Give me Planet of Giants or Day of the Daleks any day. At least they at least have something, something adventure, some sort of feel that I get that makes me enjoy them quite a lot, that Masque of Mandragora lacks. But I will say that the script is more polished than Planet of Evil, so there you go, and I like how that's handled as well. Okay, moving on to number 5, before I go into a bit of another tangent. Number 5 is, this time, it's The Face of Evil. Yeah, stories with the word evil in their title during this era are actually the ones that don't really fare that very well. Most of my problems with this story have been covered within the review, so I'd suggest you check that out. But part 1 I think I would say is my least favourite of the New Year's Day broadcast Doctor Who stories. If I was to do a little ranking of those, I think I might talk more about this than Face of Evil. But then again, I'm not really worried about talking about Face of Evil at this moment. I did a whole review on it, so you can go check that out. I don't really want to talk about it again at the moment. I'm more interested in talking about the New Year's Day episodes. So, yeah. Number 4. Number 4 is a story that, if it was just a normal story, I think it would be pretty much forgotten about. But this story contains a really emotional ending, and it's the last story to feature one of my favourite companions of the show, and in a relationship with a doctor that is just nearly unbeatable. It is, of course, The Hand of Fear. Now, normally this one will probably get forgotten about. It's probably considered bad by some people. I mean, yeah, the story is a bit not all over the place, but there is something missing, and the execution isn't always perfect. But what it is, it's nice, simple, and it's actually quite short. So short they needed to pad out the runtime in some places. But it works effectively and has done really great. And the ending is a perfect send-off for Sarah Jane Smith. It's just a great ending. She and Tom Baker wrote that final scene, and it just works perfectly. They got their characters, and it just works so well. In fact, they got the characters so well that they even improvised throughout the story. Look at that scene in part 3 where Sarah Jane Joy goes in with the Doctor. It just looks so well. It's basically like Patrick Troughton and Fraser Hines' relationship. That was so great that they would even improvise cute little stuff like them holding their hands whilst going into the Sidemen tomb before then flapping them off. It's like, what are we doing? It's so brilliant. So yeah. But the rest of the story doesn't quite live up to that final scene standards, but it's still a good story. It's just that I think it could have been handled a little bit better, but it's still really good, and I praise it, even if it's a bit of a drag, not drag, but padding in some places. And I don't think this will be everyone's cup of tea, but it's certainly a good one. We're now moving away into the more popular stories of the season with number 3. Number 3, again, fits the 4-part story arc, but again, there's some bits that could have made it a little bit shorter. And this one, instead of having padding, this one just has some gaps, just slow-moving scenes. But the story is really good and has some great moments. And this is The Robots of Death. Some great characters here, not amazing. Some of them just disappear or are just there to die. Other ones, whilst they are a bit selfish or rude in some places, but can be pretty decent characters in a later scene or an earlier scene, and some great acting and some decent motivations. I think the script could have benefited from another draft in some places or some all different direction, but for the most part, it's an effective murder mystery sci-fi story with some nice twists and turns. So, yeah, and good allegory for racism at the time. So that's good. Shame the next story kind of went a different angle with that, but never mind. So, Robots of Death, I found it good. I found it very good. I can't say it's one of the best of Tom Baker's era, but I can certainly say it's a very good story, and one that a lot of people have a good time with watching. And it is definitely a very Fourth Doctor-y story. It would capture the character brilliantly, and Leela is getting even better in this one, so that's great. Seeing this dynamic work. Number 2, speaking of this dynamic and also the racism angle, we now jump into the season finale, and this is certainly a great story. The Talons of Weng-Chiang. Another super popular story, and in fact, in Doctor Who magazine, in the 2014 best stories, it came 5th. It came 5th, and it was the second favourite of the 70s. In fact, I was even going to read through them all in this ranking. I'll do that at the end, but get to the magazine itself now. There we go. So I'll deal with that in a few minutes. But yeah, this story came 5th and overall and second in the 70s, and I can see why. It's a very good story. It is a bit long, so I do recommend taking a break in the middle. But once you've taken that break, you'll be ready for the next bit, and you'll enjoy it. Got some great supporting characters, both allies such as Jago and Lightfoot, and villains such as Chang and Magnus Greel and Mr. Sin. It's all just really great, and it's all handled really well. Lots of more great sets. Look, nice merging with Victorian London with China. So basically, it's Chinatown, except not real Chinatown because that's in central London. But well, the current one is at least Soho area rather than Limehouse. But at this point, maybe Limehouse was the Chinese population area, and it's handled really well. I mean, there is some slight racism in this story that does kind of hinder it. Why is it always the good stories that have a few problems when it comes to ethnic stuff, like sexism, racism? Some of the main characters are rude to each other, like the Tomb of Simon, that had very mild racism and very mild sexism. In the Damons, the Third Doctor was more rude to Joe than any other story, and I've even heard that the Third Doctor may possibly be the most sexist Doctor, or at least I've heard someone say that the First Doctor was supposedly portrayed that way in Twice Upon a Time, but I heard someone at some point said that they thought the Third Doctor was more was probably the most sexist. I mean, maybe not to Twice Upon a Time, First Doctor standard, but out of all of the Doctors. But yeah, it's the great stories that will have that. It's not space pirates. The space pirates are going to have a black character, and they're going to have him be someone's servant, or give him a name called Cotton, or Wool or something, or they're going to have him shove people. Actually, no, that did happen in one I didn't like. I'm waffling, but point is, it's the good stories that have the mild racism, and it's the one that gets picked up on. I mean, I didn't like Planet of Evil, but people do, and that one has some mild racism in it. The Mutants, I don't think that's a very popular one, but I like it more than Space Pirates. So, yeah, that has some mild racism. Last Story was a racism allegory. Yeah, but it's good stories, or stories people like, that have this, whilst bad stories like the Space Pirates don't. Apart from, well, I didn't like Planet of Evil, as I keep mentioning, and that there was that one black guy who wasn't treated very well, was actually a bad character in that, but I don't consider him a bad character because he's black, but I think the writers might have, possibly. But yeah, it's usually these stories that have these problems. To the Cybermen, the Daemons, the Talons of Weng-Chiang, every time. City of Death better not have any of this. There better not be any of that. There's maybe even be some slight ageism in Deadly Assassin. Probably not, but I'm just wondering if that's the case. It might be in a later Gallifrey story, though. Speaking of the Deadly Assassin, number 1 is, of course, the Deadly Assassin. Easily the best story. It has some of the best writing, best direction, best scenes. I mean, there are some slower bits in the first episode and throughout episode 2, but it gets really interesting pretty quickly throughout, or at least throughout part 2 it gets really interesting, and the Matrix stuff is really fun and really entertaining, and it's the way they handle Time Lords isn't actually as bad as I thought it would be. And it's actually really well. I think the more stuffy politician bureaucrat stuff, it works here. I think it's going to get weaker later on, and it's a shame they couldn't be as powerful as they were in the War Games. My goodness, they were great. But it's still a really brilliant story and has lots of great stuff to it. And even Crispy Master is pretty brilliant. And well, of course, Peter Pratt Peter Pratt also gives a great performance, and I think everyone's just done brilliant. Bernard Hospital gives one last great performance before he retires from the show, apart from maybe a few Big Finish audios. Same with George Pastel, except I don't think he does Big Finish, or did Big Finish, but he does another good performance. And yeah, it just ended up being a great story that proved the Fourth Doctor doesn't need a companion. Well, not all the time at least. I mean, every now and again he could have his own adventure, but you should really have a companion with him for most of the time, in my opinion. And that would be the same for all of them, to be honest. Possible exception of the War Doctor, but that's under different circumstances. But yeah, also, this is Jack McCulloch's favourite story of all time. Another shout-out. I hope he's happy with these shout-outs, otherwise I think I may have offended him. I've either pleased him or offended him, one or the other. Anyway, so that's it from my Season 14 ranking, and I'll just go through the list again. Number 6 is the Masque of Mandragora. Number 5 is the Face of Evil. Number 4 is the Hand of Fear. Number 3 is the Robots of Death. Number 2 is the Talons of Weng-Chiang. And number 1 is the Deadly Assassin. And I'm sorry I didn't really talk about Face of Evil that much in the ranking, but it's just that I didn't really want to talk about that one again. I basically covered my whole points about that in the review, so I just would have rather stick to talking about New Year's Day stories episodes rather than that one. So, I mean, yeah, that was one, but I'd rather talk about other ones. That's why, or move on to the rest of the season. And before we go, I will quickly reveal where each story came in the overall list. As soon as I find it, so many pages on these. Here we go. The results in full. Season 14 stories. Okay, so we got the Talons of oh no, it's 6th. I was wrong. The Talons of Weng-Chiang is 6th, not 5th. That's City of Death. Ah, a very good choice. But Talons of Weng-Chiang is 6th. The Robots of Death is 11th. The Deadly Assassin is 21st. The Hand of Fear is 101st. Just face and mask to go. The Masque of Mandragora is 104th, and the Face of Evil is 130th. And this is out of 240 stories. So in the list, you've got 1 in the top 10 and 3 in the top 30 from this season. Would that be 2 in the top 20? Yeah, 2 in the top 20, 3 in the top 30. Deadly Assassin just misses out being in the top 20. By thanks to Seas of Doom for some reason. I mean, all the others, yeah, but Seas of Doom, really. Yeah, no, that's a great story, but Deadly Assassin is better. And then if we look at the top 20 itself, like I said, Deadly Assassin just misses out being, top 20 of the decade. Then the Deadly Assassin comes 9th of the 70 stories. The Robots of Death comes 5th. And the Talons of Weng-Chiang comes 3rd. My mistake, I thought it was 2nd, but it's 3rd. Because then I found out that City of Death was just 1 place above it. And in the overall rankings, so that beats it. Well, I'm glad about that one. So anyway, thank you for watching this ranking for Season 14 stories. And I'll see you guys next time with the start of Season 15. A lesser season, in my opinion. So that's it from me. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye. Don't forget to click below to subscribe to the official Nicholas Payne Retro YouTube channel. He'll probably also remind me anyway. So, here we go. So, might as well just give him a shout out. But, of course, with what's coming up later, it's still one of the best of his... So, let's get right down and... As soon as I stop burping, for the billionth time, excuse me. Now, I did say in the Masque of Mandragora review that Face of Evil was going to be my least favourite story, but after rewatching Face of Evil, I then mentioned at the very start of my Deadly Assassin review and in the Planet of Evil review that that was no longer going to be the case, and Masque had now taken that position, and I would confirm my least favourite story of the season by the end of by the ranking, and I can confirm that it is not Planet of Evil. That is not Planet of Evil, Face of Evil. I'm retaking this. I'm retaking this whole bit. If it's not the Face of Evil, it is of course well, if it's not the Face of Evil, then there's only other one. Well, if it's not the Face of Evil, there's one. Yep. So our sixth spot. Frick. Other things, there's just how he didn't write for the show in between those two stories is a bit of a mystery. But it might be just as well, because when he does just come back for a third story, Planet of Evil, well, quite a few people like that one. For me, it's the worst story since the Space Pirates, and it's probably my second least favourite at the point of this season. And overall, it's certainly one of the lower ones. And then we've got this one, which is definitely a good story, but there's something missing. For me, it just feels like there's some sort of creativity that his first two scripts had. Might even have it a tiny little bit in his third, but but there was just other stuff I couldn't get into that maybe I missed or maybe just wasn't enough of to be that noticeable. But here, there's just something missing. Some sort of creativity that just isn't here. And I did say that maybe there was a bit in Planet of Evil, but I think maybe thinking as a sci-fi fantasy adventure, it's just that how that sci-fi fantasy adventure played out is what my problems were. But the thing is, with this one, it's great, but like Planet of Evil, there's just something that's not quite that good. I'm starting this bit again. Well, but with his Tom Baker scripts, he just doesn't feel like. But with his Tom Baker scripts, oh, come on. I know this is unscripted, but at least try and get your words right. But I just didn't like how about creativity. But it works really well. Some great stuff. And it does capture the Fourth Doctor in a very and Lena is becoming even better. Up to 12, of course. Yeah. Well, no, actually, all of the Doctors full stop, because 13 hasn't really said anything sexist about men. Only what the Doctor would normally say about a villain, really. People getting their knickers in a twist about nothing, really. Or pants, if that's what you wear. People are getting their underwear in such a twist about nothing, really. But yeah, whilst bad stories get away with not. Speaking of Deadly Assassin, number 1, Jack McCulloch will probably be. Speaking of all the time, you can have. Yeah. Seriously, Kinder's above Carnival Monsters and Day of the Daleks and Father's Day? Father's Day? Seriously? Seriously, the Abominable Snowman's above A Good Man Goes to War? So, you've got 4 stories in the. You've got 1 story in the top 10, and 4 stories in the top. Where did I leave it? Deadly Assassin, Ropes of Death. Check. 3 stories in the top 30. Where did I say the other one? Hand of Fear. Where is not Hand of Fear, was it? Seriously, Let's Kill Hitler is considered better than the TV movie? Bullshit. And Dinosaurs on a Spaceship, even more bullshit. Yep. Jim the Cyberman is 23rd? You've got to be joking. Anyway, so